Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to vinylalbumcovers.com, the front. My name is Ed, and as always, with me is Dre. And before we get started, because we already know you're really going to like this video, go ahead and hit that like button at the bottom. Do me a favor, do us a favor. We'd really like it if you would do that. Hit the bell, too, so you can be notified when we have another video coming. And then comment, too. It would be really interesting to hear what you have to say. We're going to talk a lot, but you're allowed to talk too. So tell us what you think about what we're going to say. And above all else, share this thing around too. We're just getting started. We're brand new, and we'd like more people to see it. So share it around if you want. It would be really helpful. Much appreciated. So now I'll tell you what we're going to talk about. So we just came up with this topic earlier today, or Dre did. This is actually Dre's topic. But we're going to talk a little bit about artists that should have been bigger. You know, the ones that start out with a bang and then they kind of don't, then nothing happens. Either nothing happens or not very much happens. So we're going to talk about some of those. So I'm going to go ahead and open it up to you, Dre. What's the first one you've got?
Okay, so we've kind of mentioned her before. We didn't go into too much depth, so I felt I can bring her up again here. Um, I always go back. I always feel like this is the most tragic story in music, and there's been many of them, but for me, it always goes back to Tammy Terrell. Um, she was the one artist I believe that like I said, you have like your Jimi Hendrix and your Tupacs and your Freddie Mercury, but they were able to put out sizable enough of content where they were big, they made an impact, and they had some longevity at least. I feel like Tammy Terrell never really got that outside of her duets with Marvin Gaye. She was on the cusp of being that person. Uh, All I Do, we had talked about that song before, Stevie Wonder, 1980. That song was originally meant for Tammy Terrell, and she actually did record a version in 1969. I
It's
actually have,
so good.
yeah,
Like Dre. So you Dre, I should
yeah,
tell you. So Dre shared it with me right after we talked about it in the other podcast.
yeah,
And I listened to it, and I've heard other versions of that song before.
hmm,
And it's what's clear to me is that they weren't taking their cues from Stevie's version. They were taking their cues from hers, because
right,
hers is more like, his is more kind of like four on the floor, and
yeah,
hers is more shuffle. In
yeah,
fact, that's exactly what it is. It's a shuffle. And like
yeah,
Wayne Brady, you remember Wayne Brady? He did a version of it that I think that I sent you.
yeah,
It's pretty
yeah,
much a dead ringer for Tammy Terrell's version, and I've heard others too that kind of take
mm,
that same shuffle approach. So they were copying hers, which I thought was
yeah.
interesting. Like
It's that,
that's where they're getting it from.
yeah, the more slower version, but you can tell that
Yeah,
says for Stevie, that Stevie took that from that particular song. But yeah, Tammy Terrell originally sang that song, and I didn't know that until like 10 years ago.
I didn't either.
I happened to run across it on YouTube. I don't know what I was doing, what I was looking up, and I saw it, and so I clicked on it, and I'm like, that's the Stevie Wonder song,
Yeah,
and yeah, and I feel like that was supposed to probably kick off her solo career,
it could
and
have. I mean, even that, I didn't mean to cut you off, but
yeah, there you go.
I'm just so glad that you brought her up, because it
Yeah,
could have. I mean, her version is very, all I do
yeah,
is think about you.
and
It's slower.
the live instruments, the drums, and all
Well,
that
yeah,
stuff.
but and Stevie's is just more, just kind of, four on the floor. All I do.
Yeah,
It's very four, very straight, and his was
yeah,
done afterwards. But I think
yeah.
her, to my way of thinking anyway, I think hers is just so much more interesting. Even though
I do too.
I love Stevie's voice, and it can't be denied, in that version is still fire. But I kind of like
Hmm.
hers even more because of the not only the arrangement of it and the shuffle groove of it, but just the way that she sings it. I mean, she's got to be one of the most underrated female vocalists in history. She had it, like,
Yeah, I always felt that her voice, man, she blows Dan and Ross out the water. Uh,
yes, most
uh,
people do, but yes, she does.
well, yeah, don't get me started on that. But
Oh, I
even even
will. I
even
can if you
even
want.
even even like a Martha Reeves or a Gladys Knight, and people like that, I just felt like Timmy Terrell. She was that chick, man. Like her voice was undeniable. She would upstage Marvin Gaye oftentimes, like Your Precious Love and anything but the real, but the
Ain't
real
no mountain
thing.
high enough. He was
Right,
hanging on for dear life at the end.
right. And
Like,
Marvin Gaye is one of the greats, and
yes,
Tammy Terrell, she completely stole the show. I mean, she was
totally.
just a very, very distinctive voice. You know, she was a very attractive young lady. Uh,
Yeah,
you know, and it's just unfortunate, you know, the direction that her life went. You know, she had a tumor, I believe, and I think she
she
passed out on
did.
stage, you know, in Marvin Gaye's arms. And
Yeah.
I always think what could have been with her more than any other artist, that that we've come across that we lost too early. You know, I feel like she's the one that I'm always like, what would have been like, what would her career have been like in the '70s? You know,
She gave us so little.
and it's not her fault. You know,
Not at
like you
all.
said,
Not even a little bit. But I
yeah,
mean, there's so little, you know? And it's
yeah,
such a
because
shame. And most of it, just as you said at the beginning, most of it is in duet with Marvin Gaye, and I'll take it,
right.
but she is so much better than he was.
And the funny thing is that prior to the duet stuff, Marvin Gaye was a moderately successful artist. You know, he had some hits,
Yeah, he
but
did.
that was what really got him in the spotlight, though. Those
He got
duets with Tammy
grittier.
Terrell. Right, right.
Like that,
You know
that's
that.
I think it was probably more that than anything that gave him the permission to
Mm-hmm.
leave, like, what was it? Ain't That Peculiar and Stubborn Kind of Fellow behind, this kind of
Right.
Motown assembly line pop, and move
Yeah.
straight into more, like more real
So
material like that. I think that
so
was what gave him permission to do it, frankly.
and I think that would have happened for Tammy as well. I mean, just imagine, in the
Yeah,
'70s we had Patti LaBelle, like Gladys Knight, Donna Summers, all these other, female vocalists that came along in the '70s and just really blew up. And Tammy would have definitely been among one of them.
well, but
Very
see,
soulful voice.
she was, well, see, but that's the thing. I'm glad you said that, because that's exactly what I was thinking. Like,
Mm-hmm.
of all of those Motown singers, like they all kind of had a sound, and one wasn't that dissimilar from the other.
Right.
Tammy was a whole other thing because she was so much earthier
Mm-hmm.
and so much more soulful, certainly much more soulful than Diana Ross. Uh,
Right.
Anybody, my cat is, but
Yeah.
um, sorry, it is what it is, kids. But but more so than Martha Reeves, though Martha Reeves was not a bad singer.
Really good. Yeah.
Yeah, very good. Much more so than the Marvelettes were.
Mm-hmm.
Just a much earthier, much more soulful, much more individual, I thought,
Right.
which kind of creates problems when she's duetting with somebody, because she's going to be better than they are.
Yeah.
And I mean, like I said before, like by the time you get to like the middle eight of Ain't No Mountain High Enough, Marvin Gaye is hanging on for all he's worth.
Yeah.
I mean, if I don't know if you ever heard I had the privilege of hearing the multi-track some years ago,
Okay.
and with just her vocal by itself, by the end of it, she's screaming her head off. But it's so, you can't tell in the track, but she's really, like, she's totally letting go.
Right.
And it's so good. And like at the very end of it, before they enter the final verse, my love is alive, right there at
Mm-hmm.
the end of that middle eight, for those of you who are singers amongst us, this will make sense. But Marvin Gaye was forced into his mix because
Mm-hmm.
he couldn't do in full voice what she was doing. Even though she's up a third, she could do the whole thing in full voice, and he couldn't.
Yeah.
He didn't have the chops to do it. And I'm not saying he sounded bad. I'm not deaf. He didn't sound bad, but
No,
he
not
was
at all.
having to make adjustments vocally in order to keep up with her. And she was just sailing through it with no problem at all. So she
Yeah.
was just a tremendous talent.
And it was very apparent, and even in some of her earlier stuff, before she even got on Motown, but like "I Cried" was really good. "If I Would Marry You," just really good songs that are just don't get heard enough. Obviously this early '60s. I don't think she was even signed with Motown yet. I think she was still. I think at one point she was a groupie for Sam Cooke or something like that. There's a photo of them together in a restaurant. Her, Sam
I
Cooke,
didn't
and
know
some other
that.
people. Yeah,
Okay,
and
that's cool.
so yeah, but yeah, she has some really good stuff like "Come and See Me." Prior to the duets of Marvin, man. But yeah, it's just a tragic story. I hope that one day we're able to get like a little Netflix special or something of her, man, because I think her story truly deserves to be told, man. She was an amazing artist.
They did an
Um,
unsung on her, I think, yeah.
did it? Did they?
I'm 95% sure they did an unsung on her, because I think that's where yeah, they did, because that's where I learned about just how hard that brain tumor was on her.
And you know, and it probably didn't help too that she was in some abusive relationships. You know,
Oh
David
God.
Ruffin, David Ruffin, James Brown. Prior to that, they dated. You
Yeah.
know, and yeah, it's just unfortunate, man. She was just a very beautiful young lady, just a kind spirit, it seemed, and you know, she got involved with the wrong people, and you know, by the time you know she got hooked up with Marvin when they were friends, you know, when they were singing duets together, it was probably too late at that point. But
It was, man.
I'm glad that they were able to record together, and I'm glad that you know she blessed us with that beautiful music before she did you know pass on. But
She did,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
interesting too. It's like, you know, we always say, and it's probably
mhm,
true. It's like, man, I wish we could have gotten more.
yeah,
But it's like, because she was suffering for longer than we knew. It's
hmm,
like, but if she wasn't suffering, would we have gotten that greatness to begin with? Like,
right,
I'm almost wondering if like if her illness didn't inform the choices that she made. Because I mean, think of it, like it's
hmm,
2020 now, and we're
right,
still sitting here talking about her.
yeah, 50 years later, right,
She did what she intended to do. She succeeded. She wins because we're
yeah,
still talking about her, because she's still
exactly,
memorable, and Ain't No Mountain High Enough is still played.
hmm,
You're All I Need to Get By is still played,
yeah.
etc.
If this were to remind, Luther and
Luther and
Cheryl Lynn took
Cheryl
that
Lynn.
song, and I didn't know that either until like 5 or 10 years ago. You know, I would happen to be in the car listening to satellite radio, listening to one of those 70 stations, and I heard that, and I was like, oh, this is their song. And I was
Yeah,
like, that makes sense because when you think of duets, Marvin and Tammy are the standard bearer of that, basically.
yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree completely. Yeah, but it just, she was just ridiculously talented, and
Hmm.
I think she accomplished what she set out to do, even though she didn't
Right.
mean to do it quite so fast.
Hmm.
There's no way she can know, of course, but we're still talking about her 50 years later. There's something to
Yeah.
be said for that, and it speaks to the quality of the music that she gave us, and on some level, she had to know that she was on the clock.
Yeah.
So she knew she needed to make it count, and she did. So
Hmm.
she wins,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
completely wins. So I was kind of, I wasn't, when you said Tammy Terrell, I kind of did a little bit of a list before we started, and I wasn't thinking of this at first.
Hmm.
But since you said Tammy Terrell, I have to say Donny Hathaway.
Oh yeah.
Um, I
Yeah.
just have to. Like, so Donnie started out as little Donnie Pitts when he was just a kid,
Hmm.
which frankly may have been the beginning of the problem. Um, but he was kind of shoved out onto stages and kind of, did the dog and pony show thing for a while. As a kid, he was shoved out there
Right.
by his grandmother. Um, and because he was good enough, he could do it. He could wow audiences even at a young age.
Hmm.
And then of course he went to Howard, and that's where he hooked up with Roberta Flack. But more importantly, where he ended up hooking up with King Curtis, and was then could thereby end up getting a deal with Atco, which is basically like the vanity imprint of Atlantic Records, same thing,
Yeah.
which was the same label that Roberta Flack was signed to. But he put out, actually even before that, he did arrangements for all kinds of other groups. He was the staff arranger for Curtom Records, Curtis Mayfield's record label.
See, I never knew that.
Yeah, it's cool. There's a single by a group called what's in a Center Stage. That's what it was.
Hmm.
They did a song called "Hey Lady," and on the back of it is "Every Day Is a Fantasy." "Every Day Is a Fantasy" puts me to sleep. It's not that good, but "Hey Lady" is great. Like, it's just this up-tempo major key thing, and he arranged the crap out of it. It's so good. And then he did a version of the Bacharach David song, um, "Are You There?"
Okay.
um, which Luther actually, and we're talking Luther covers, he ended up covering that somewhat later. Um, but it's just such a strange song anyway. But he threw the kitchen sink at it, Donnie did.
Yeah.
And it's a great arrangement. I have to send it to you. I'll even put a link in the description so all of you can hear it.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's just such a great arrangement. And the group itself was up to it. And for whatever reason, they only put out a few singles and then just kind of disappeared. But that's kind
Okay.
of what Donnie was doing back then. He even ended up writing a tune for Woody Herman's orchestra, believe it or not,
Interesting.
which turned into which was called Flying Easy. And if you're a Donny Hathaway fan like we are, you will then know
Hmm.
a couple of years after that he had lyrics added to it, and it became the Flying Easy that we know to be on Extensions of a Man,
Okay.
which is a whole lot slower. I'll post a link to the Woody Herman track too. It's bizarre
Okay.
in a great way. Like it's good. You can hear the beginnings of the tune. It just isn't that effective that way.
Right.
Richard Evans did the arrangement, and it's much. It's just very fast. It's not terrible,
Yeah.
but it's not. That's not it. I don't dislike it. That just isn't it. It should be much slower. I thought anyway, and Donnie's is much slower and it's much better. But that's what he was doing before he got his deal, and then finally King Curtis secured him a deal with Atco, and he was off and running. Everything is my least favorite of his albums, only because he's still trying to figure out who he is on an album.
Right.
He was a little too all over the place.
I Think You Baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The Ghetto is on that, I think.
Yeah. I like that song though.
I do too. It is
Yeah.
good. And there are a few other things that are good. Je vous aime beaucoup is on it, which is good. But it's not a mess of an album. He's just, as anyone would, who is that full of talent and can do anything.
Yeah.
Like he's kind of like Jacob Collier before we got Jacob Collier.
Okay.
He could do anything. Like he took orchestral conducting classes with Yusef Lateef. Like he could do anything he wanted. And sometimes you find with artists like that, like I played you that cover of PYT. I sent it to you last night. Did you get a chance to hear it?
Yeah, I did. I listened to that actually.
What did you think?
It was interesting. It was different, but
it
wasn't bad. Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of like Jacob is much like Donnie in the sense that Jacob can take a tune and go too far and break it. He broke PYT, completely broke it.
Yeah.
And turned it into his own thing. And it's a lot to take in. I like the fact that it's a lot, but there are people who don't like the fact that it's a lot, and I understand why they wouldn't. Yeah. Donnie was a lot like that in that he had so much talent, he could break tunes. And while he didn't really break much of anything on that record, he broke other things. But he didn't break anything on that record. It was just, he was kind of all over the place.
Yeah.
Trying to figure out who he was going to be, and there's even some homogenizing going on too. Like I have to be able to sell this record too, so it feels a little like that.
Yeah.
And as a result, it for me anyway, like that first album doesn't really stick with me that much. The second record does a whole lot better. I mean,
yeah.
Please go ahead.
I mean, you've got a friend. You've got a friend. A Song for You. I mean, it's just yeah. It's a classic. It's a master. Like to me, I think we both agree on this. Donnie has the greatest voice in music, bar none.
The end.
Yeah. You've lost a loving, and it's like, it's weird because his music it can be kind of depressing, but it's so hard to turn off.
Yeah, you can't. You have to go there with him. You have to. I remember when I got Extensions of a Man, and I was late. I'm not going to pretend that I got it in 1973. I was born in 1973. The chances of my getting it then are very low.
Yeah.
But I got it many years after the fact when I was old enough to understand. And so I think I got it in like 1994. I think that's when I ended up with it. Okay. And it was just a matter of my being in Tower Records and getting curious and seeing it and knowing that he was so influential. And I'm like, okay, so I was thinking like, where should I start? And I saw the cover, and the cover, vinylalbumcovers.com. What are you going to do with me? But I saw the cover, and I thought that was the best cover. So so I went with it.
Isn't it like what is that? It's like the black font, and then like I don't know what color is that. It's like not burgundy. What is that? It's like it's like a very faint color. It's it's kind of, I can't think of the color at the top of my head.
It's basically a white cover with like a drawing of him, and then
Yeah, and
these
the
Art
black,
Deco letters on top.
yeah,
Like
yeah, the
Donny
black font.
Hathaway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. It's yeah. That's the. I think it probably is the one that you're thinking of, because there was also the one with him with kids, and that was Everything Is Everything.
Okay,
And then there was the other one with the second one with like the wall drawing, that was
right.
Donny Hathaway. And then this third one is the one that was more like the more abstract cover, which I thought was more interesting.
Okay, I think I'm thinking of the second cover then.
You are? Okay.
Yeah.
This one was just very, it's, if it were, I mean, I think no, it's not virtually behind me either. It's on the shelf underneath it. But at any rate, I was going to like try to look and see, but it's not there. It's on the shelf beneath it. It's hard to get to. It's not hard to get to, actually. Let me just go ahead and get it.
All
But
right.
if you, because I think it should be fairly easy to grab. But if you look at the cover, just obviously, because vinylalbumcovers.com, of course, that's the one I'm going to go for every single time in terms of just like the way it looks. I'm very close to it. I'm just fiddling through the H's.
It's like a pencil drawing, it's like penciled in, like his face.
Yeah, it is. I
Right.
can't, for whatever reason, I can't find the actual album or the, like your standard one. I have a quadra disc, and it was this.
See, that's okay. So it's like a white, like yeah, white, but it looks like it's been kind of like discolored over time. It look at like it's been sitting out somewhere, and the white got discolored or something. That's what it looks like.
Well, it's just because this does.
Yeah.
It's just because this is a press from this press is my age. It's
Okay.
almost 47 years old, so it's not supposed to look this yellowed.
Okay.
It just kind of does because of age, and the back is that.
Yeah.
I know it's reversed, guys. Sorry, but yeah, it is white. It just, that's how it came from the plant. It's just been almost 47 years.
Right.
But yeah, so I saw that cover, and it was mostly like, there was mostly the lettering that did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have to have it because there's the lettering on it. So, and I knew it was going to be good anyway because it had been so influential on so many of the artists that I loved. And
Yeah, I think.
go ahead.
Yeah, I believe Aretha did a remake of "Someday We'll All Be Free." It was a more gospel oriented track. It was in the Malcolm X soundtrack back in '92.
Yeah, yeah. Well, a lot of people have done that song. It's just,
Yeah.
yeah. I think
That
she did Young, Gifted, and Black too. I think, didn't she?
yeah, that was pretty, but early '70s, I think.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that wasn't too far removed from Donnie's version.
No, no, it wouldn't have been. They would have been right on top of each other. He didn't write
Yeah.
the tune. I think Nina Simone did. If I'm
Oh,
not mistaken.
that makes sense. That's the
If
one I
you
left off
hear
my
it, it makes
list. But
perfect sense.
yeah,
If you know her,
yeah.
then yeah,
I probably should have put her on my list too. I forgot. Yeah, Nina Simone.
yeah. She
Yeah,
is another one that just,
yeah,
ooh, she lived hard. But
yeah.
so, but I remember listening. I made the mistake of, and you should never do this, by the way. If you have not heard Extensions of a Man, do not listen to it in the car the first time. It's a bad idea.
Oh yeah.
I'll tell you why it's a bad idea. So I popped it in the car, and of course, the first thing you hear is you hear the orchestral thing that he did at
Mm.
first, which is good.
I love the Lord.
Yeah, that one, yeah. And it's all instrumental, and it is good, and you really
Hmm.
hear his arranging chops, and it's all done. It's broken, like it doesn't. It's not proper arranging, but it's great.
Yeah.
It's so good, and then it segues into the greatest song I will ever hear in my life, which is "Someday We'll All Be Free." That's my favorite
Hmm.
song of all time by anyone at any time.
Okay.
Nothing comes close to that. There's that song, and then there are other things well beneath it.
Yeah.
But I had not heard it before. It wasn't exactly played in my house. I'm a white guy. It wouldn't be.
Yeah.
But based on what we thought it was about at the time, we've had our reasonings adjusted. Now we
Hmm.
know it was actually about Donnie, and it wasn't about the African American struggle at all.
Right.
But I could certainly see how it's used as such. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Definitely.
But I remember I was driving home, and it took from Tower to where I lived at the time, it took maybe 25 minutes. And I was
Okay.
listening to the song in the car. And I mean, Dre and I have already talked about how much we love Donnie's voice. And it was the first like real time that I'd heard it away from Roberta. Because of course I'd heard the duets already because they were
Yeah.
played, they were played in situations where I would have heard them, but I'd never heard him by himself before. So I was getting it all. This was all like firsts, so many firsts. And we got about halfway through the tune, and I'm trying to drive, and I literally had to pull off the side of the road. I couldn't do it because I was
Mm.
so deeply moved by the sound of his voice, by the arrangement. I mean, who throws a trumpet solo in the middle of an R&B tune?
Yeah.
But he did. Um, and I'd never heard anybody sing so emotionally in my life. It is literally the most meaningful musical experience I've ever had. Being in the
Wow.
car that evening, just pulled off to the side of the road, just kind of letting it wash over me. And it brought me to tears,
Yeah.
which is the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. And it's even now to this day, so many years after the fact, sometimes when I listen to it, I have to be ready because sometimes it'll still get me because it's
Yeah.
just so emotional. The end of it where he's just going off like, and now that we know what it's about, like we know why he was doing it.
Yeah.
He was really trying to be okay, and he never would be. He would never find that. He was trying to convince himself that he would be free of this, and it never happened.
Was there ever like a reason why he got to the point, or was it just something that he was just born with? Like was there something that happened during his childhood that kind of brought him to that point?
I mean, you never. Schizophrenia is generally, my father's bipolar, so
Okay.
I know a little, I know a thing or two about it, but it's generally brought about by like outside stimuli. Something has to happen.
Okay.
There really is. I mean, I guess there can be some level of predisposition,
Hmm.
but most often stuff happens, you know. Like with my father, his parents died very close together and he drank too much. Like
Yeah,
that's
that'll
enough to
do
do
it.
it right there.
Yeah.
Um, with him, I mean, if you never really hear about his parents.
Yeah.
Something funny went on there. He was raised by his grandmother. So something funny went on there, and it wouldn't be too difficult to leap to the idea that maybe that had something to do with it.
Right.
Um, but I remembered based on the Unsung special, which I still have on a DVD somewhere over here, but that it just kind of snuck up. And I remember they were talking about this time. I think it was either in 71 or 72 where he was sitting in front of a TV watching Static.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
I think we even mentioned it. I even mentioned it here once.
Hmm.
But that's what that disorder does to you. It just messes with you so badly that you can actually be entertained by looking at static on a TV screen. Like that's just bizarre to me.
Was he actually looking at it, or was he just off in his own little world? You know what I mean?
According to Unsung, he was literally sitting there watching it.
Wow.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Um,
that's kind of that's kind of frightening.
yeah, it is. But that's I mean, the mind is so much bigger and so much more capable than it's ever given credit for. And you don't know
Mm.
it until it all goes wrong.
Right.
And
Because
his
I
did for a long time.
Yeah. How was he with Layla? Like, because I know he passed away when she was about 9 or 10. Like, how was that relationship like? No, I don't think she's really. I've never seen any interviews where she's gone into depth about her relationship with her father. Obviously, she was kind of young, so I'm not sure how much she would have been able to retain. But like, how was he with her?
I don't know. She doesn't speak of it. I
Yeah.
don't think she's ever spoken about it. She's kind of,
Yeah.
and she kind of, she's, the only thing she said is that there's like, with regards to like, cause she's covered, she did this cover of Someday We'll All Be Free with Take Six, some
I heard
music.
that.
And
Yeah.
it's good. Like it's a good cover.
Hmm.
But when she's singing it, and she has a tremendous voice. No shade to Layla Hathaway ever. Like
Hmm.
she has voice for days.
Another underrated artist.
Very underrated.
Yeah.
But she did the cover and it felt somewhat distant.
Hmm.
And it makes sense that it would, that she would have to achieve some distance between the tune and herself because of where it came from and what it was written about.
Right.
So it still sounded good, but that's about where it ends. It sounded
Hmm.
good. Um, but yeah, so and the rest of the record was kind of the same way. And I was literally just stopped off the side of the road from beginning to end. I couldn't stop it. Just taking this whole thing in. And I remember by the
Yeah.
time I was done with it, I was literally sitting there out of breath.
Yeah.
Because I mean that album more than any other that I have will take you on a ride. It's quite simply the best album I've ever heard. It doesn't get
That's
any
love,
better than
love,
that.
love, love, love. The slums.
Dude,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
I know it's you.
Yeah.
Even even
Lord help
Magdalena,
me.
even
Yeah.
Magdalena for all its tack piano craziness. What
And
was
then
what was
Lord help me.
well, that was a B-side for that's the bone. We talked about this before.
Wait. I thought that was the last. That's the last track though. On that album, isn't it?
You had the Rhino CD.
Okay.
That tells me exactly what you heard the first time. Because the last two songs on the Rhino CD are This Christmas and then Lord Help Me, which was the B-side of
Okay.
the This Christmas single when it originally came out on Atco.
See,
So
but
now I know what you have.
I thought this Christmas was like prior to that though. I thought this Christmas was like like a couple years earlier.
It was done after
Okay.
the Donny Hathaway album,
Okay.
but it ended up on the Extensions album on the Rhino bonus track version.
Okay. I got you. I
So I
got you.
picked your lock. I now know what you had. But and I got that after the fact.
Oh, did you?
I had
Okay.
the original Atco CD,
All right.
and since got the Rhino CD, and based on sound quality, I shouldn't have,
Yeah.
because it doesn't sound as good. The original Atco CD is better, FYI, kids, for sonic reasons. But it's the record is just so all over the place,
All right.
and if you listen to it knowing like this is the work of an ill man, I Love You More Than You'll Ever Know too.
Mm.
This is the work of a man who wasn't well, who was in his mania the entire time, and just
Yeah.
like, I want to do this and this. I want to do all of it. Like,
Yeah.
I want to put it all on a. He even said it in an interview that showed up on the back end of the CD called These Songs for You, which was a combination of live things.
Mm.
There was a Donny Hathaway interview at the end of it where he talked a bit about that record. He wanted to explore every music there was, just anything.
Mm.
He wanted all of it. And that's what that record does. I mean, imagine, if you will, like successfully doing that. He did it on one album. That's crazy to me. And then spent the rest of the decade kind of under the radar exploring country, which he loved. He loved country music.
Yeah, I heard about that. Yeah.
Yeah, because he talked about it. He mentioned it was kind of like the white side of the African American experience, which is blues, of course.
Yeah.
He said that himself.
Makes
And
sense.
he continued to work. If you have those box sets, the Someday We'll All Be Free box set, Never My Love, he continued to work. He just didn't do very much of it. And so by the time he got to You Were Meant for Me,
Mm-hmm.
which is the worst thing he's ever done, it's barely a song. You've heard the thing, yeah? You were meant for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a
I've
mess
heard
of a
that.
song. It's terrible. Do you
Yeah.
like it?
No, it's okay.
Yeah, it's just it's not it doesn't have a form. Not that everything has to have a pop form. I don't care about that. But it's just kind of all over the place. The lyric is nothing. It wouldn't even work on a Hallmark card. It's just not very good. He didn't write
Yeah.
it either. Oh, dang it, I forget. It's not coming. Maybe it'll come to me in a minute. If I think of it long enough, I'll remember who wrote it. A Vegas dude wrote it. The guy he made his living as a and still does make his living as a Stevie Wonder impersonator.
There's a lot of those. We've discussed that before.
Yeah, there is. There's plenty of it. But it just, as a songwriter, he makes a very good plumber. It just wasn't good.
Yeah.
And then, of course, you end up with The Closer I Get to You, which is good as a song.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that even though he was in tremendous mental pain cutting the tune, so much so that he and Roberta weren't together when they did it.
Really?
She did her vocal first in New York, and then the tape was mailed off to Chicago, and he did it away from her. So they weren't together.
That's a beautiful track. That's one of those songs where I'll hear it and I'll immediately stop what I'm doing, and I just kind of get lost in the song.
I feel
It's one of those songs. I've always enjoyed the chemistry between the two of them. Roberta's voice isn't the best. There's not a lot of range there. It's not very powerful, but it definitely complements his voice very well.
It works. See, to me, like, it works in certain instances. On that song, it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And because she was well, she could kind of drive.
Yeah.
And she does. And still, it's just interesting to me that even though he wasn't anywhere near the height of his powers when he cut that song. It was still nominated for a Grammy.
It's a great song. It's a really really good song. It's
Yeah,
one of the greatest duets ever. It's really good.
agreed. And I mean, just the chord changes. I mean, it's very nearly jazz.
Yeah.
And the that old ancient synthesizer that just kind of pokes through the edges.
And see, I think that's what gets me. There's just it's just in a lot of it's a quiet storm song in a lot of ways. Like just
Oh, it is.
the overall
Oh,
vibe of it. Yeah, it's one of those it's one of those songs where I'm just kind of just I just get lost in thought just listening to it.
and his vocal is still ridiculously good,
Right.
even
It
at that.
is.
And you can tell he's not okay anymore. If you
Yeah.
know, if you
Yeah.
don't know, it doesn't matter. But if
Well,
you,
wasn't that was released after he passed away, right? That was
uh,
79, 80. That was somewhere that was late
no,
70s,
that
early
still
80s.
existed while he did.
Okay. Because when was that song? That was 78, 79. That was getting
You're
close to the end
thinking
there.
of, I know what you're thinking of. You're thinking of You Are My Heaven. You're thinking of Back Together Again.
Yeah, but more closer I get, was that pretty close to when he took his life?
It wasn't far because he
Yeah.
took his life in 80.
Okay.
I believe it was 80. Let me look. Let me cheat. I'm just gonna look because yeah, this stuff matters. I want to say it was January of 80 when he took his life. Let me look. No, 79. I'm an idiot. I'm wrong. Forgive me.
Okay.
Um, I was off by a year. In fact, January 13th, 1979, I was wrong. But the song came out a year before, so it did come out while he was alive. That much is
Okay.
certain.
And that was the first album he did since Extensions of a Man, correct?
That well, and he didn't. It wasn't a record. It was just the song.
Yeah, that's
He didn't
unfortunate.
do another record after that. That was the last
Yeah.
that we got. We got live things after that, of course, that we now have, like the Bitter
Yeah.
End thing, which came out on Record Store Day, which I have, and then and other things too. And In Performance, which was a live thing that came out
Hmm.
after he passed, but that was recorded while he was still working. It was kind of during his heyday, that brief period where he just couldn't get it wrong.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. This is a good one because he didn't. There's not a he didn't give us a lot, but what he did give us was very impactful.
it
Very.
was like it's another instance like with Tammy, and then of course by the time he cut those three tunes, that was intended to be another duet album.
Hmm.
He just couldn't, bless his heart, he just couldn't do it.
Yeah.
He did Back Together Again is what it was.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
He didn't even finish the tune. If you listen to the song, you know it's not finished. Because he basically did he did two verses and a bridge, a repeating bridge, and that's all he did. He couldn't finish the tune. And the story goes that he was in the studio working on it, and in the middle of it, he lost it, which happens to schizophrenics. He lost his place and
Man.
flew into a manic episode and ran into the corner of the studio and was just hunched in the corner, afraid that the white man was coming to get him.
Yeah, I heard. I think I've heard that story before.
Yeah, it's just I can't imagine what that must feel like. Worse, what it must be like to watch it, to see somebody
Yeah,
disconnect like that.
so he was born in what the mid 40s, 45, I think it was. So something.
I think so.
Where's he from originally? I don't know. I don't know this. I should know this.
It's was it Chicago? Yeah, Chicago. I was right. Chicago. I'm cheating. I
So
have
it
no
wasn't that.
problem with doing it either. It's got to be
So it
right.
wasn't. So it wasn't the deep south, but yeah,
No, not at all.
something drastic must have happened to him. Maybe I don't know. Something must have happened
I don't
racially to his parents or something for him to go to an episode like that.
I don't know either. But I mean,
Yeah.
these were not unusual episodes, and I know that for a lot of years, his relationship with Roberta was fractured over it. Because
I
I
believe
mean,
so.
if you've ever dealt with somebody who has that stuff,
Hmm.
they will fly off into a rage and not even know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
They literally fly out of control. And for those of us who are around when it happens, it's tough to deal with, to say the
Yeah.
least. It's really hard because it's hard to not take it personally, because they're coming at you personally, even if they don't know why they're doing it.
Yeah.
So it's hard to not take it personally. And they're doing it in an effort to control you. They want control of your emotions.
Yeah, and it's like, how do you even talk somebody off the ledge like that?
You can't. There is no such thing as talking because it doesn't make sense. So you can't
Yeah,
come at it with logic.
yeah,
You just have to wait it out. All you can do is just kind of be there. And then even sometimes if it's bad enough, you can't be there because then you're the problem.
right. You just gotta,
You
yeah,
almost have to like leave and let them deal with it.
yeah.
Um,
Man,
and he never came down off of that, so that song was never finished. And you notice if you listen to it, because Luther Vandross's background vocal arrangement just takes over, and it's even Roberta's not singing anymore. It's just you get nothing but this long vamp of background stuff that Luther arranged.
and it's funny because Luther did a remake of that too. Him and Beyonce, uh, like years later,
The
they did a
Closer I Get
version,
to You, yeah, I did.
which wasn't, which actually was decent. You know, I'd rather hear that version of Beyonce than the version we get all the time now. But that's a, you know, never mind. That's a different topic for, you know, another time.
It's just there is only one The Closer I Get to You, and you can't touch it. Like
Yeah, I mean,
there's
there
some
isn't
songs that you
obviously.
just don't go near, and that's one of them.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
don't cover Donnie, it's a mistake.
yeah. I
You'll
agree.
suffer. We will laugh at you while you try. Just
Yeah,
don't do that. Don't do it to yourself. You can't. You'll
yeah.
never measure up. No one can. But yeah, he never got back to the studio again. And then unfortunately, while he was in a hotel room in New York City, he flew into one of those episodes and he was alone
Hmm.
after he'd had dinner with Roberta the night before and did what we know he did
Yeah,
to try to escape the voices in his head.
yeah,
Um, so it's another one of those instances. Gosh, we talked a lot about this. This is like an episode unto itself, but it's like you look at that and it's like it's very much the same kind of thing with Tammy Terrell, although we got far less from her. You almost have to wonder how much more we could have gotten from him,
yeah, yeah.
where he might have taken us next, you know.
Right.
So, but he wasn't well enough and he couldn't do it. So it's unfortunate.